Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Sunday Matinee. We're on episode 11. It has been a hot minute since we've recorded anything, but we're back now. So we've had this little thing in this country that has been distracting a lot of people, and it's still kind of a distraction because there's no sense of finality to it, as it turns out. But we're not here to talk politics much tonight. We're here to talk movies. And tonight we're going to talk about remakes. But first, we're going to get to some news. Really first, the housekeeping stuff. So as per usual, you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/film is truth or truth and film. Film is Truth is a video store in Bellingham. I think it still exists.
Visit them too then. Yeah.
Visit them in a mask, as please. Well. And on Twitter, at Sunday Matinee. And if you're watching this on YouTube, which is the only way you can watch it right now, then good. You found us. Subscribe, like, do all the things. Tell your friends. Because, if this explodes, it'd be great. Let's jump into the news here. Oh, the panel. I have not introduced the panel. I'm a terrible host. Hey, guess what, everybody? I've got my usual panelists tonight. The usual suspects. Joining me once again, Sarah Moore on my right. And beneath me, I'm assuming that everyone's going to see the same screen as I am. So right beneath me is Dea Osborne. All right. So welcome back. We might have someone else joining us. You never know. I sent out a message. They may just be running late. So we'll see. But let's jump into the news here. So I added a few bits of news since I sent out the itinerary because this episode has been delayed a week. And things have happened in the last week. But we'll get through with 2 weeks of news here. So we're going to start with Black Panther. So recently, Marvel announced that they are not going to be digitally inserting Chadwick Boseman into the Black Panther sequel, which is the best possible news for that movie. That is, no one was going to want that. And this is not like the Rise of Skywalker situation where they had previous footage that they could just import for the film. So that's great. And there was really never any rumor about it. I think Marvel just wanted to get on top of it before anyone started spreading that type of rumor. And this last week, they announced that filming is expected to begin in July, which is a lot earlier than I thought they were going to start filming. But I trust Ryan Coogler to deliver a great film. We really haven't talked about Chadwick Boseman on the show yet. It's been rough trying to imagine what this movie is going to be without him. And they have yet to really say what direction it's going to go in. And, again, I'm not a huge fan of spreading rumors. I do, however, I'm a big fan of the rumor that Letitia Wright will be promoted to the role of Black Panther and take over. That would be excellent. That's how it's happened in the comic books. And they've already demonstrated in the movies that Shuri is a more than competent warrior and more than up to the task. So, what do you two think? What would you like to see from Black Panther 2?
100% I'm behind Shuri. Not that I wouldn't watch it, but I feel like I would be disappointed in a recast right now. And trying to do him digitally would not be good either. My favorite idea I've heard is promoting Shuri. So that's definitely what I would like to see happen.
Yeah, I love Shuri, and I would like to, if you're a major fan, well, even if you're a semi-fan, but nobody's really a semi-fan, everybody's a major fan of Black Panther. One of my favorite podcasts also is Cinephiles, and they did a 3-part. They broke their mold of tradition, and it has to be 10 years old to have proven its staying power because of Chadwick and his passing and the power of who he is as an actor and everything. They did a 3-part breakout conversation on this. they had some really interesting theories on Shuri taking over, and then maybe seeing how we might be able to bring Killmonger in and around to refuel. And yeah, it's some interesting options. I'm not the comic book fan that these gentlemen are when they're talking, but give it a listen. It's pretty cool concepts on that one.
Well, no matter what they do, well, not no matter, again, no digital Chadwick.
Which is
you
good.
know, but I'm still really excited for this movie. I don't know if I'm ready for it though. Like I could have stood standard for them to not be filming this one for maybe another year to really give it that time.
We won't see it for like 2, so
That's true. It was originally announced to come out, I believe, in May of 2022. I am absolutely certain it's not going to make that date anymore. Not just because of Chadwick's passing, but because of the ongoing pandemic and Marvel delaying everything on their table. So, but it is going to be. I am certain it's going to be a great film because the first one is one of their best films, hands down. Speaking of comic book movies, that's going to be actually a lot of what we're talking about in the news today. We recently talked about the Snyder Cut. So it was reported that I find this so funny. Dea was actually kind of right.
it's
4 minutes. Only 4 minutes of new footage has been filmed for the Snyder Cut, which means that however many, like 4.5 hours, however long it is, that footage apparently did exist. There was a Snyder Cut. So yeah, Dea, you got that one right. I'm still not looking forward to it, but it's always an interesting topic to talk about. And I find it hilarious that they had to bring in Jared Leto and everyone who really wasn't in it that much to film 4 minutes of footage.
Can I ask you if this role, what you're doing now, makes you feel like you need to watch and try more things than you have the gut instinct to do because you want to give more things a fair try?
Yeah, to some degree. If this was, it would be even more. I feel even more that way if this were actually my job. Like if I was being paid to do this, then I would definitely feel obligated.
Yeah.
Because it's currently being done as a hobby, and because I do actually have a day job, I do feel like I can be a little bit more selective. But because I'm actually talking about Justice League a lot, I will probably sit down and watch it, just so I can, even though I'm not looking forward to it, even though I didn't like the theatrical cut.
Close the circle.
Close that circle. It'd be kind of hypocritical for me to really just keep bashing this film without giving it a chance. Plus, well, I'll talk about HBO Max in just a second here, actually. Speaking of streaming services, I don't remember if we discussed this on the last episode we recorded, but so I mentioned that Soul is coming to Disney Plus on Christmas Day. I don't remember if I talked about how Disney announced it's going to be free, which is awesome. That is a great little Christmas present for families out there with Disney Plus. I don't know if it speaks to Mulan's success or failure with the $30 premium charge. It could, but I honestly just think it has more to do with the fact that it's an animated film, and animated films are geared much more toward younger audiences, and younger audiences need something to do right now while they're stuck inside. So, and I'm looking forward to this one. It's Pixar. They've yet to let me down, really.
Yeah, I like the story of the team, mostly Black-led team saying, hey, we should do something on this kind of focus, and them saying, go for it, do it. And apparently the art is very different from the usual Pixar, so it'll be interesting to see. I'm looking forward to it.
Sarah, any thoughts on Soul?
I'll definitely, we have Disney Plus, so I'll definitely check it out at some point. I feel like I might have seen a trailer for it back before theaters were closed, but I don't remember a lot about it. It's like the tough thing about having a child who's like a toddler is she's not quite old enough that I have all the like family movies on the radar yet, but I do love Pixar. So, I'll definitely watch it at some point on Disney Plus.
Well, I feel like it also just hasn't been as heavily advertised as a lot of the other movies that are either have been delayed a lot recently or are coming to streaming services. Um, it just isn't as high profile, and that probably just is because it's not a superhero movie or a major sequel. But it's Pixar, we have faith.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of Pixar, just a little blurb here. Today is the 25th birthday of Toy Story 1. 25 years ago today, released in theaters in the US. So happy birthday to Toy Story. Happy birthday, Pixar. You've been one of the best studios out there since your inception. So thank you for all the joy that you bring almost every year.
They really haven't had much in the way of, definitely you can rank, good and better, but they really haven't had a misstep their movies have all been enjoyable.
And their innovation is like the, I guess, cartoon, but it's not a cartoon, digital computer animation version of like what James Cameron does, but he takes 10 years between films, and they're constantly innovating and bringing new versions. I remember the mind-blowingness of seeing the toy soldiers, the seams of where the plastic melds together in the original Toy Story, of like the amount of detail that they put into there was mind-blowing to me. It was amazing.
It's particularly telling how innovative and how far they've advanced if you were to watch Toy Story and then just jump right into Toy Story 4, and then just see how much more detailed everything is. It's insane.
Which they were already detailed. I haven't seen this one. The last one I saw was it was the really dark one where they were sending the toys down the conveyor belts. So that must have been 3. Yeah, I was surprised at how dark that was, frankly, for small littles. But yeah, I haven't seen 4 yet. But I believe it because they're innovative as hell.
Oh yeah. So speaking of movies that are launching on Christmas Day, I had originally written down the itinerary. Is Wonder Woman going to get delayed? And since this episode got delayed, we now have an answer to that, and it is no. Wonder Woman is still opening in cinemas on Christmas Day, where it is safe in the U.S., which probably isn't going to be a lot of cinemas. Thankfully, it's going to be much safer in Europe and in other places in the world. But here in the U.S., it is also launching on HBO Max on Christmas Day, which means that at least some of us are going to get to watch it, including me, actually. I just got a free 14-day trial code for it. So I'm going to save that. And Christmas Day, watch Wonder Woman and see how that goes. Because
do it. And the West Wing special while you're at it, because it's effing brilliant.
I'll let my sister watch that while she's home. I never got into the West Wing.
It's so good. It's so good. It's so good. So yes, tell her it's a fun one.
There's a lot of great stuff on HBO, like, because you've never watched like Westworld, right?
I never got it.
I haven't watched the recent one, but the first season's great. And the His Dark Materials series they've been doing on there is really, really good. That's actually why we were planning to resubscribe. And then when I saw your thing about Wonder Woman, I'm like, yay, bonus.
Anna Melissa McCarthy's coming out for the holiday season. I love me some Melissa. She's my girl. My question is, has Fire or Roku, I keep hearing back and forth that they're getting close, but have either of those, I have them both. Is anybody saying, yes, we have a deal so I can watch it on a TV instead of my phone?
Oh, I don't know.
I don't either. We finally got an Apple TV because we were having a lot of problems with the Fire Stick, and they do have it for Apple TV. So
it goes to Apple TV? Oh, that's good. Okay. I didn't know that. Thank you. Helpful.
Well, fingers crossed you're going to have a way to watch that on your TV, because Wonder Woman, as much as I want to see this on the biggest screen possible, if that has to be my TV for the first time, then I'll take it. And hopefully you can get it on your TV as well.
I'll take it for Christmas. I need a good Christmas present. I'll take it. I want to see it on the big screen. I'll pay to see it on the big screen when I can again. But right now, I'll take a happy moment for 2 hours.
Yep.
Bring it.
And I'm predicting that even though A lot of people have Disney Plus. I'm predicting that Wonder Woman is going to outstream Soul on Christmas Day. I think more people are looking forward to Wonder Woman. But I'm not gonna take a bet on it or anything. All right, so
you
finally,
have all day. You can do both.
It's true. Finally, last thing in the news. Again, comic book related, but this is absolutely was not unexpected. Chris Pratt has joined the cast of Love and Thunder. So, given the way that spoiler alert, if you haven't seen Endgame, given the way that Avengers Endgame ended, this is absolutely not a surprise, and I will not be shocked to hear if Bradley Cooper, Dave Bautista, and Vin Diesel, and who is it to play? Karen Gillan, also end up joining the cast. Maybe not all of them, but I'm sure if Star-Lord's there, he's going to bring at least one other. I feel like you have to bring Rocket and Groot into there, considering that they were like the ultimate tag team trio with Thor in Infinity War.
Wait, isn't other timeline Zoe also now in the mix?
Yeah, I don't think they would necessarily want to have her story distracting from the story of Thor. There's already so much going on in that movie. It's supposed to have Natalie Portman with the hammer now. Ooh. And Christian Bale's in it as the
Valkyrie,
villain,
right?
And Christian Bale's in it as the villain. Valkyrie's back, so they've already got a massive cast, probably the biggest cast for a Thor movie. So I don't think we need to have the Nebula or the Gamora side story distracting from everything.
I did not realize that was that wide. That's cool. That's a lot of toys in one.
So yeah, if you're looking forward to Thor, there's even more to look forward to. Woohoo! So that's the news for the week or two. So let's start talking about remakes. So what is a remake? I Googled it because that is the way that most people are going to, look it up now, because what is a dictionary anyways? So the Google definition of remake is noun, a movie or piece of music that has been filmed or recorded again and re-released. And their use of it in a sentence, and I find this one really fun considering what I want to talk about here, is a remake of the classic horror tale Frankenstein. Mm-hmm. So what do you two consider to be a remake? Dale, I'll go to you first.
Remake versus reimagining. A remake means that you're not changing the tone or content of the story as you move it forward from the last iteration. If you don't have anything original to contribute to the situation, you're doing a remake, in my opinion.
And Sarah?
Yeah, see, it's interesting that the example of Frankenstein, because I feel like when I think of a remake, I think of something that was originally one medium remade in that medium to be like very similar to that first version. But something like Frankenstein, I feel like it's different when it's like a classic book is the source material and it's been like there've been several different versions of it filmed. I feel like that's a little sticky. It's like, it's just, I feel like if it was a movie that was specifically remaking one particular film version of Frankenstein, maybe I would consider that a remake. But if it's like just a new version of the novel on film, I feel like that's a little different. I don't know.
This is going to be a very easy debate because there really is no debate tonight. I agree with both of those assessments because to me when I think of remake, I think it just takes from the old and might change a little bit. It changes just enough, maybe just enough to feel fresh, maybe not enough to feel fresh. We'll talk about that in bad remakes. But yeah, I generally tend to think of it as one medium to another, like you said, Sarah. And we'll talk about that when we get to adaptations. One term that has popped up in the last 15 years that's become very popular is reboot. Reboot, I would say a reboot is different from a remake in that reboots tend to apply exclusively to franchises that have gotten stale or just need a fresh start. They can be a nice hard reboot like Batman Begins or Casino Royale, where you literally start over. It could be a soft reboot like, oh gosh, what's a good one for a soft reboot? I can't think of any.
Spider-Man's?
Like, would you consider Spider-Man's?
The Spider-Mans have been rebooted 3 varieties of times, but only one I would call an reimagining, and that would be the current.
I would not actually. Come on, headphones. I would not call Spider-Man a soft reboot. When I think of soft reboot, I'm thinking of a reboot that like takes into account maybe like one film as canon, but then like discards the rest.
So maybe
actually,
something like the Nightmare on Elm Street remake.
No, actually, I wouldn't even think of that as a soft reboot. I would think of that one as I would think of that as a remake. Like, okay, here we go. This is going to be a very specific one that only real nerds are going to get. But the second time that the Godzilla series, the Japanese series, was rebooted in 1999, it was 6 films long, and all but one of those films in that series only considered the original film as canon and ignored the 20 some films that came in between, which is a weird way to make a series, but that's how they did it. And actually the newest one, the newest Japanese live action Godzilla film, Shin Godzilla, also is a soft reboot. No, it's a hard reboot. It started the series over. Never mind. I just lost my Godzilla card tonight.
So what does that make Star Wars? Because they've done like all 3 in a way. They ignore canon, but they have canon, but then they go side of canon when you consider things like Mandalorian.
I don't consider anything
And
in
Rogue.
Star Wars to be. I don't think anything in Star Wars is a reboot. I think that they are just prequels and sequels, and it's a complex timeline now that we've added the Mandalorian into there, and we've got the Clone Wars animated series and all the other animated series.
Right?
Yeah.
So Rogue, Clone Wars, and Mandalorian are all within the same time-ish, yeah?
No, Mandalorian takes place in between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens.
So he's sooner than the others. Closer to the original timeline.
He's right after Jedi.
Yes.
Yeah, and Rogue One was before A New Hope, right?
Yeah, it's great to have a visual timeline for Star Wars because
they're more complicated than Marvel, and that's saying something because they have the whole TV universes, which, by the way, I'm super looking forward to. WandaVision, my last Entertainment magazine finally got here, and I'm stoked.
Yeah. That should have been in the news. WandaVision launches on January 15th, everybody. Marvel Studios first. Yes.
Holy crap, because as of printing, Entertainment magazine's like, we have no idea because COVID. Did you know it's a thing? That's great.
Well, for the longest time, everyone thought they kept saying it was going to be this year, so everyone thought it was going to be December.
Yeah.
Once The Mandalorian was done.
Yeah.
But January is not a long wait, so I'm excited for that. It does, however, mean that this really is the first year that we're not getting a single piece of media from Marvel Studios since 2009. So let's hope we never deal with that again.
Only because they're holding things, not because it wasn't produced timely. Yeah.
Correct. We should have had 2 movies and 2 TV shows this year. So yeah, I feel so bad. I know franchises that have actually done the soft reboot thing that people know, but I can't think of them off the top of my head. So yeah,
is Batman soft or reimagining, or because Batman to me is reimagining when you go from original West to Tim Burton to Nolan? Those are vastly different feels.
Those would all be like hard reboots.
Okay.
What about the transition from like Tim Burton to Joel Schumacher?
I wouldn't call that a reboot. I would just call that, a change of director for the worse.
Error. I would call that error.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. Superman. Does everyone remember Superman Returns from 2006?
Is that the Amy Adams one?
Yeah. No. That's it was Brandon Routh as Superman, and it was the one directed by oh gosh, the guy who directed X-Men that we don't speak of anymore because he's a terrible human being. Oh, Bryan Singer. Yeah.
Singer. Yeah.
Yeah. So it came out the year after Batman Begins, and it was considered a soft reboot because it acknowledged that Superman 1 and 2, the Christopher Reeve movies, existed, but it completely ignores 3 and 4. So that's a sort of a soft reboot. So it takes some canon, but ignores the rest.
Yeah, it's easier for me to think of period films. The conversation I was having with my roommate this morning was about like Pride and Prejudice. So there's been 5 jillion million Pride and Prejudices, but like the canon, the one that is the end all be all is the Jennifer Ely, Colin Firth miniseries by Andrew Davies. Like that's the hallowed, this is the thing, but they had the time to do it. And then you have the Keira Knightley, which I refuse to watch because I just don't like Keira Knightley. But from what I understand about that is that they really took, okay, in life where they would be based on their monetary worth, where their station in life would be much lower than it's projected to be in the book. So we're going to kind of basically make them wallowing in a pit of despair. It's a very different version of the book because when you study Austen, you understand that she's much like Oscar Wilde. She's making fun of the people that run in her set. And so it's ridiculous and the mother is ridiculous. And it's a comedy, but the Keira Knightley version is a drama and there's another way to take it. So it's a reimagining version of what P&P is supposed to be in that. So it's easier for me to cross that field in conversation than for the comic books, because comic books tend to have a feel to their movies, a certain feel, versus the aesthetic difference of like, we're light, we're airy, we're walking about the room, we're having polite conversation versus we're in a pigsty, we're covered in mud. It's easier for me to delineate when you're talking period film.
Well, let's, since you got on the subject of Pride and Prejudice, let's jump to, we mentioned earlier, adaptations. Mm-hmm. And this is where I think people get the most confused when it comes to remakes. Because I don't consider any version of Pride and Prejudice a remake of an earlier version.
They would all be adaptations of the novel, in my opinion. Like different adaptations, but that's a specific source material that's had several different adaptations. Same with Emma, same with a lot of her other, same with a lot of her other novels, because they're all very popular and they've all literally probably had like 20 different BBC versions, let alone Hollywood versions, let alone like reimaginings, like there was like a Bollywood version.
Right.
And Bride and Princess.
So it does have a reimagining version. The last I did see, I love Daphne du Maurier. She's one of my keys. So I saw The Last Rebecca. It's beautiful. It's interesting. It's not at all the book. I don't expect a movie to be the book. The book is the book. But I do expect the characters to be the characters. And it's not. They are not true to the characters. They're doing a very different version. It's a reimagining of Rebecca. It's not an adaptation of Rebecca, like the Hitchcock is an adaptation. So I totally see what you guys are saying in the adaptations. I didn't think of it that way, but it totally makes sense to think of it that way. But when you go off in left field over here and you're like, that's not like the book, that's not like the character isn't even that way, you're taking a different route. That's, to me, a reimagining.
Yeah, something like the Haunting of Hill House Netflix series, which I absolutely loved. But then I read the book, and I mean, that is definitely a loose reimagining. Mm-hmm. I mean, it really has almost nothing in common with the book. other than just kind of the fact that there's a haunted house and some of the characters share the same names. But yeah. That being said, I loved it. I loved that series way more than I liked the book. But
well, imagine what it's like in my shoes. And Sarah, you can attest this, having at least read Frankenstein, but I have seen so many different cinematic versions, and you could either call them adaptations or reimaginings. No one is a remake of any other, because Frankenstein and Dracula get taken so wildly out of the context of their source materials every time they're adapted. Even the Kenneth Branagh Frankenstein, which is supposed to be as close to the book as we ever get, takes a lot of liberties. So adaptations they can be crazy. I think Pride and Prejudice and a lot of the Jane Austen stuff and all those other period pieces are a little bit lucky to not have to deal with some of the crazy stuff that Frankenstein and Dracula go through. Or maybe Frankenstein and Dracula are better for it and you get more interesting takes.
Meaning what? Like people aren't changing it enough?
Well, for instance, we'll go with the absolute craziest route. There is a Japanese film called Frankenstein Conquers the World, which is made by the studio that did the Godzilla films, in which the heart of the Frankenstein monster is transported to Japan from Nazi Germany and then exposed to radiation from the bombing of Hiroshima. And that eventually leads to a little boy like eating the heart and growing to a gigantic Godzilla-like size. And, everyone calls it the Frankenstein monster. And he, of course, fights a dinosaur. And it's like, this is as far from Mary Shelley as you can possibly get. But it's still Frankenstein.
Yeah.
I think the craziest you ever seen, I guess you have Pride and Prejudice and zombies. So I guess no one is really immune to the absolutely insane take.
Yeah. But that was also based off a book somebody wrote that was like And
I don't get, I don't get upset about it. The book. The book's fine. The book, nobody's saying that. The people that get all up in arms if Harry Potter is not the book, it's like, of course it's not the book. It's not supposed to be the book. If Pride and Prejudice was a book, we would spend hours of just watching women walking around rooms in circles in silence. It doesn't that doesn't make any sense. It needs to be a different medium. Nobody's taking away from the fact that you can go read the book anytime you want to. Yeah. What makes this a moment to watch a movie? That's the point. And for me, there's no reason to remake. I don't have any reasons for remakes. Reimaginings, sure. But if the movie already exists and you're just copying it, if you have nothing new to bring to the story, why am I wasting my time with you? Because I love art, but I don't want to watch you copying somebody else's art. I want to see how it is reimagined in your eyes. Otherwise, I'll just take the original over there. That just makes sense to me.
That leads perfectly into the next section we have here, which is when do you feel a remake is warranted? And Dea, you kind of just answered it right there. Yeah. I think another good reason for remakes is and in terms of older movies, I of course love the horror movies and the special effects movies. Special effects have advanced considerably. Makeup effects have advanced considerably. So when 10 years ago, I got to see the remake of The Wolfman, and while I don't necessarily like the script as much, the script changed enough that it felt fresh, but the makeup was incredible. It was everything I've wanted to see from a werewolf movie in my lifetime. So I think there's always going to be a justification to remake or reimagine. Maybe not remake, because I think that the way that we've been using the remake definition is very strict compared to what most people use it as. So yeah. I actually appreciate that. I appreciate that new term, Dea, because I did not think of that. Reimagining, I think, is a much better word to use for a lot of the films that we've been talking about. Either reimagining or reboot or just an adaptation. Because if we're using the strictest definition of remake, as Google pointed out, there are very few real remakes out there. There's actually only one I can think of, and it goes under the bad remakes list, which we'll get to very soon. We've actually talked about it
it's
on the
funny
show.
though, because I would also kind of what you were saying about like the main. I mean, I would in the realm of special effects, I see what you're saying, but kind of, but at the same time, like I mentioned Nightmare on Elm Street remake earlier, and that was a case where I feel like the updated effects ruined the movie compared to the original. Because they CG'd like everything that was done practically in the original, and the practical effects were much creepier and actually got much better performances like out of the actors. Like I don't know if either of you have seen this movie, but there is a famous scene in it where the girl is like getting attacked in her dream by Freddy Krueger, and she's flying on the ceiling and onto the wall, and like her friend is like seeing this and she's being slashed as she's like going up and they actually for the original built a room that they rotated so that she was crawling up the walls and the ceiling, you know, it's moving on her, she's trying to crawl, they're having blood effects go off on her, and it's crazy awesome scene. And that same scene in the remake, and I would say that was a remake because it's very, very similar to the original. Not quite, I think the one you're going to mention later, but it's very, very similar to the original. I would consider that a remake. They CG'd a person flying around the room and the blood. And it was kind of like ludicrous looking. And so I feel like sometimes it actually like benefited a movie more to have like the more practical effects. That being said, things like Lord of the Rings, if they had tried to make that in like the 80s, I think that would have benefited from like being a remake. But
for sure,
CGI gets in the way so frequently. I hated when they went through and digitalized like Yoda and what's his name, the big slug dude,
Jabba.
Thank you. Like, no, Yoda needs to be a Muppet. And I'm so happy that the child in Mandalorian is a freaking puppet. It needs to be. And I'm so happy and so proud of them that they knew that and picked up on that. On the remakes versus reimagining, the big topic that came up this morning was Greta Gerwig's Little Women. I loved that remake. I thought it was beautiful. It was a reimagining in that she took for granted the fact that we already know the story. Everybody knows the story. Everybody's going to see it, has seen it a million times, or read the books and understands where we're going. So she drops us off in the middle, and then she expands the world by expanding Louisa May Alcott's take of Jo and what she wanted to do with Jo, and then also expanding the fairy tale version of course, Meg's in love and she wants to marry this man, but it's very hard being poor. And, you know, every other version leaves with her getting married and she's happily ever after. But it's effing hard. It's hard to be poor. And I love the fact that the focuses were on different places so that by the middle of the movie, when the opening of the book happens, this very satisfying home Christmassy feeling of there it is, I've been waiting for it. And it's earned and it's beautiful and it's a different way that I've ever seen it. And I've seen probably 6 different versions of it. And it's fantastic. And it's an absolutely necessary version of Little Women. And that to me, reimagining, absolutely.
To answer to the actual question you asked earlier, my opinion of when a remake would be warranted, which I've never actually seen a movie remade for this reason. I feel like a remake would be warranted if it was a good story idea that had poor writing and poor acting.
Oh yeah, easily. I mean, that's one of the reasons that I think horror films. I'm going to go back just a little bit. Because you talked about Nightmare on Elm Street, and I think it's very interesting that that was one of 3 films from roughly that era that have been remade in this century, and that's along with Halloween and Friday the 13th. There was this huge craze to remake the late 70s, early 80s horror films recently, and none of them.
Massacre too.
Yes, yeah. Yep, and none of them were as renowned as the originals. I think the only Halloween movie that's had that sort of critical acclaim is the last one, which is a soft reboot. The one that Michael Gordon Green directed, and they brought back Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah.
Yep. They ignored Halloween 2 through God knows however many they made and just said, hey, this is a sequel to the original film. But yeah, these horror adaptations, horror gets remade a lot in general, or re-examined a lot, as I've talked about with Dracula and Frankenstein. And again, you talk about how the special effects in the 80s are endearing. The fact of the matter is, I love the movies from the 30s and 40s. Those special effects, with very few exceptions, are not endearing. The crisper our televisions get, the more you can actually start to see, oh, there's the strings, or oh, that's where they're transitioning, that's where the camera's changing, that kind of thing. That's where all the fades are at. And it's like, oh, okay, I can see why they'd want to upgrade this one with modern makeup effects. So. But I think a good reason also to remake a movie when a remake is warranted is just when there's a sort of a social need for it. Like right now, we're probably going to see some type of remake of a classic horror movie that is going to be examining the world around us right now. Don't be surprised. Imagine, we keep hearing about it. Imagine what Guillermo del Toro would do with Frankenstein right now. I just imagine that he would, he could tell it an 18th or a 19th century Gothic story, but it would somehow feel like it's telling the story of today. That's when I think a remake is also warranted. We've kind of touched on what we thought are some good remakes. Does anyone just off the top of their head have any other like remakes or reimaginings? I love that term. Thank you so much for that.
Ones that we liked.
Yeah.
So one thing we haven't talked a lot about is remakes of foreign movies.
Yes.
One of my favorite, typically I'm kind of have been about remakes of foreign movies, but I do really love the American Ring remake. Although that's also kind of, that's like the first one was based on a book also, but I would consider The Ring a remake because I feel like it is a remake of the film Ringu, not the book. The book is very different. And the other one is I actually really liked the American remake of Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Surprising.
I've heard that in several factions. I've heard that was. Is it? Why?
Actually, well, because I actually thought it was closer to the book than the Swedish version.
Okay. Like
it actually followed the book more closely, in my opinion, and it actually pulled fewer punches because it's kind of a rough story. I feel like he committed to some of the viciousness a little more than the Swedish version did. Okay. I liked the performance of the girl in the Swedish version, but then Rooney Mara did well too. She interpreted the character very differently. But I like Daniel Craig a lot better as the man. I forget what his name is, but the lead. I like Daniel Craig a lot better than the actor in the Swedish version.
There's an Asian film that it's not coming to my head at the moment, and I should have written down the notes, but I'm a big food movie person. I love watching food happening on a screen, and I remember mostly Martha watching that at the Grand, which I believe is German, and I liked a lot about it, but the food they were cooking was food I was not into. So the moving over to Catherine Zeta-Jones, and I can't remember his name. What is he? He's in Possession. He's in
Aaron Eckhart?
Yankee, yes. Their chemistry worked well. There was something about the sparseness of the German version that I liked in the telling of the story, but there's so much about the food because she's a chef that was like grossing me out that it kept taking me out. So that was one of those flops over that I was like, okay, I'm okay with the fact. I appreciated this version for what it was and for the fact that we have that to now reimagine or whatever you want to call it over here. That's the topmost one.
I actually haven't seen, well, I probably have seen plenty of remakes of foreign films, but I'm probably not as aware of them because, of course, there's, I've seen the original Magnificent Seven, which is, of course, a remake of Seven Samurai, but I haven't seen Seven Samurai, so I can't compare it. Same with The Departed, which is a remake of the Hong Kong film Infernal Affairs. I have not seen that. I need to, because The Departed was an absolutely stellar crime film. Sometimes I think it's nice to go into a movie not knowing it's a remake. Mm-hmm. Because if you know it's a remake, you might immediately judge it that way. Mm-hmm. Obviously, in some cases, you can't get away with that, like Nightmare on Elm Street, those kind of films where they're so already heavily ingrained in pop culture. It's also nice to go to discover something that is an adaptation that you didn't maybe think was, like that wonderful moment when you realize that 10 Things I Hate About You is The Taming of the Shrew. Like, you may not get that out of the movie trailer, but then, of course, all three of us know enough about Shakespeare that we could sit down and watch that for the first time and say, oh, I know what's going on here.
And The Lion King for Hamlet. And those are great. But the truth about Charlie with, Angelina Jolie pretending like I like Angelina Jolie, but she's no Audrey Hepburn, and Johnny Depp is no Cary Grant. It's depending upon the chemistry of those two people to be in Charade. I don't need a remake of Charade. Charade's awesome. Let's leave Charade alone and go find something else. There's plenty of creative people with things ready to be made. Let's make those.
Hang on one second. I don't remember those being the actors in that movie.
I thought they were.
Definitely not. It's Mark Wahlberg and Thandie Newton.
Wait. So what were those two in then? Because I thought it was something that
Johnny Depp and Angelina Jolie, you said?
Yeah. Those two.
I think I know what you're talking about. And it bombed at the theaters, as I recall. Mm-hmm. And no one talks about it ever.
I thought it was that. I thought it was a remake of Charade.
Except us tonight.
I'm a giant snob, and I wouldn't see it because I was pissed. Because why would you remake
The Tourist,
Oscar winning, which is the same. It's the same. Look in the notes and see if it's the same thing as Charade, because I'm betting it's the same thing as Charade. Anyway, that's a moment where I'm like, why are you remaking something
it does sound like it on IMDb.
Yeah.
It probably is.
Like, it's like, leave it alone. It's the standalone guy of the whatever. And that's the other thing. I understand you have the money, you have the rights, you have scripts that you can build upon, and you can readapt or whatever. But there's so much creative content by really good writers that gets passed by every day because people don't want to take the risk. Because if you don't make $200 million in the first weekend, it's a failure at the box office, which is the ridiculous truth of the situation. There's so much art that gets left on the table that needs to be made, but we keep remaking the same damn things over and over again.
That is a huge problem, and I would like to address it because, we have the stigma about the word remake, and we shouldn't, because some remakes are good, but we have a stigma about remakes. And we have this sort of stigma about everyone saying, all we ever get is these big comic book movies and these big tentpole films. No one ever does anything original anymore. And you're absolutely right. That's not true. You and I both go to the Grand and we catch some of these films, some of which are fortunate enough to make it to the big theater chains, some of which don't. And I think very few of them get the kind of word of mouth that they deserve. I think Parasite was one of the fortunate ones that picked up steam, and thanks to its big Oscar win, everyone at least knows it exists. But yeah, too many small films, too many small original films do get overlooked. And get out there, everyone, when it is safe to do so, and support your small art houses and your little films, just as much as you support your big comic book movies. Enjoy those comic book movies too. They are an absolute blast. But please, like those same directors that are doing these big Marvel films, they were doing small stuff first, and they continue to do small stuff. In between Thor movies, Taika's doing Jojo Rabbit, Wilder People. So these directors are doing some great stuff.
In between Ocean's 11, Clooney's using that to bankroll his smaller pieces. So yeah, they're out.
So yeah, but at the same time too, do not think of remake as a stigma, because we've talked about some good remakes. Like I said, I don't think The Wolfman is as good as the original, but I like it. The 1999 Mummy is an absolute blast and is very different from the 1932 one. Yes.
Rachel Weisz and Brendan. Those are fun.
Yep. The new Planet of the Apes trilogy that started in 2011, that was a great reboot of that franchise. John Carpenter's The Thing is probably looked at as one of the greatest remakes of all time, even though it's not a remake. It's based on a short story. So there you go. There you go, world. Let's debunk that little fact. One of my favorite adaptations of the last decade, Sarah, you'll appreciate, was True Grit.
Yeah, that was a good remake.
And everyone thinks of it as a remake of the John Wayne film, and it's really more of an adaptation of the story, the original story. The John Wayne film is a John Wayne film. Let's be real.
Wasn't 3:10 to Yuma also a remake?
Yes.
The one with Christian Bale and I never saw the original, but that was a good movie. I enjoyed that movie.
Yes. I never saw the original, and I don't know if it's based off of anything. So for now, I'm going to consider it a remake. But yeah, that Christian Bale, Russell Crowe version is very good. And I'm not a big Western person. Anyone else have any some good remakes in there? Because do we want to move on to what the audience is really excited for, and that's the bad ones? Because I've been saving this one the entire episode. I've been hinting at it. The number one worst, most pointless remake of all time is 1998's Psycho.
I knew it would be that one.
which Day and I already talked about on the Psycho episode.
What is the point?
It is the most pointless remake of all time. Shot for shot.
Graduate degree project that is not necessary to make other people watch. That's an exercise. Yeah. Not the same thing.
Yeah. Just watch the original film. I mean, and I will say, though, we talked about this too on the Psycho episode. They obviously did something right with Bates Motel because people seem to enjoy that. So, obviously
that was more of like a prequel, right?
Yeah, it's sourcing where he came from, which makes sense. That's feeding into the lore that we know of. So that makes sense to me.
I think the last season of Bates Motel also actually does sort of tell the story of Psycho, but I don't know for sure. I know they have someone as Marion Crane in that season. So, but I mean, obviously that's proof right there that no film is so sacred that it can't get a good reimagining, or at least some good lore to back it up.
That took several seasons.
Yep.
Versus Hitch's 2 hours or less than 2 hours of brilliance. So it's and that came to mind during Rebecca. I'm a giant fan of that book, and that and Jane Eyre I buy every time I see in a used bookstore. I've got I don't even know how many versions of those books. Well, it's the same book, but it's like I have 350 copies of it. So I'm very intimate with it. And I'm not precious about it. Of course, you can take it this way or that way. But to me, it was absolutely a reimagining on the characters, and a lot of it has to do with the Me Too movement. A lot of it has to do with where we are in time and how women are viewed, and there was more power given here, there was less power given there. We're trying to make him more likable than he usually is in the book. We're giving her more power than she usually has, which dynamically changes the text, which is fine. The book's there. I will always have the book, and that's cool, and it's really pretty to look at, and they're perfectly fine actors. But it's not the story. It's a version of the story, which is cool, but it gives it its own reason for being. We want to imagine it over here instead of here. So it's not a remake. It's its own little animal over here, and it's pretty, and you can visit it if you want to. But yeah, Hitch I seem to think pretty much freaking nails things. When he hit it, he hit it. He found the nerve and followed the nerve and nailed it most of the time.
Sarah, do you have any unfavorable remakes that aren't The Nightmare on Elm Street?
I know, that's definitely my number one. I'm trying to think if there's that one always really. I mean, basically, generally that whole, like we were talking about, that whole kind of era of the horror remakes from the 70s and 80s. I'm not really a huge fan of any of those. I'm trying to think if there was. Come back to me.
All right, because I've got another one. It's, again, this one's not so much a remake as more a different adaptation, and that is, I of course talked about the recent Apes trilogy, which I think is great. Then there's Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes from 2001, which I enjoyed when I saw it, but I was also in high school and dumb. And actually, it actually is closer to the original ending of the book than the 68 version with Charlton Heston. But that was an instance where they changed the ending in such a way that it became better than the ending of the book. Like one of the best twist endings of all time in the original Planet of the Apes. But this new one, the Tim Burton one, was just Tim Burton at his most Hollywood boring. It couldn't be better than the 68 original. The only way they could make Apes work again was to completely reimagine the story with the new trilogy. And I think.
And Andy Serkis.
And yes.
Huge.
A rare instance.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say it's one of those rare instances where we're talking about films where we actually do appreciate them for their modern special effects.
I was going to say, overall, I would probably put the newer Beauty and the Beast on my list of not favorable remakes. There were a couple things about it I liked, but overall, it felt pretty unnecessary.
Leave the cartoon. I agree with that, and I love a lot of the people involved, but that was better as the original. Well,
we could have done an entire
the original cartoon version, not the original Belle Bette, and that's a whole other animal.
That being said, I did like the live action remake of Cinderella. I thought that was better than the cartoon. But yeah, Beauty and the Beast. And then I haven't really seen all of Lion King or Aladdin, but from parts I've seen, I feel like they feel kind of unnecessary as well. I haven't watched Mulan yet, so.
I have not heard good things mostly about Aladdin or Lion King, and I actually haven't even seen any of these Disney live action remakes, which is actually a good subtopic for us, is because these are big right now. It's basically all Disney is doing in their live action department is remaking all of their animated classics, which is a shame because they have the capacity and the budget to do so much more.
If their talent lies in other places, they should focus in that, I think.
Why don't they remake The Black Cauldron, which nobody knew about and nobody saw and wasn't that well done?
Well, I think that may be why they tackled The Jungle Book as their first big live action remake, is because The Jungle Book is not as highly revered as their other animated films. And you had Jon Favreau directing that one, and he was fresh off of working with Marvel, and he really got to do a lot of great stuff with the special. I haven't seen it, but I've heard that it is one of the most visually beautiful films that Disney has made. And
that one was not bad. That one was not bad. It was pretty good.
But I think once they realized that they could remake their animated movies, it immediately got into their heads that they needed to remake all their princess movies because those are the ones that people love. And that seems to be the only ones that they've been remaking since, except for The Lion King. Because Little Mermaid,
I feel like
next.
I would like them to remake, or I don't know if it's even possible, but why don't they remake like Pocahontas and make it less racist?
We're just talking craziness now.
I know, maybe it's not possible, but
no, if they're going to do it,
to go back and watch.
Yeah, if they're going to do it, then yeah, take it on and do it. And maybe that's in the works for all we know. That could be something that they're seriously considering because let's maybe correct history in that we've been learning the wrong history for generations. Let's write it. That'd be good. The earliest one I remember was, and maybe it's not the same because technically it was like, I think George of the Jungle, but wasn't that the remake of
well, I mean, that was a cartoon from what, the 60s or 70s.
So
right?
The Brandon thing, that was different than Tarzan, even though it's incredibly similar.
Well, I mean, George, the cartoon was basically an animated version of Tarzan, so
yeah. And
so
that's
many adaptations of.
That's the earliest version of what I think I remember them remaking, like turning around right away into live action. And now it's become a thing again.
I'm gonna share some of what people have been saying on social media, what some of their favorites and least favorite adaptations remakes, reimaginings are. So on Facebook, James says, my favorite remake is the 1941 Maltese Falcon. The two previous versions are fun to watch, but Maltese Falcon, that's one that was adapted 3 times very quickly after the other.
Is that a Dashiell Hammett?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So this is the Astor Humphrey Bogart that we all know. Okay, yeah. I did not realize it was remade that frequently. That's surprising.
Jeanette on Facebook says Night of the Living Dead 1990, which I haven't seen. It's one of those
good or bad one.
I believe for good. I don't know. Actually, Jeanette does not say. Doesn't say. So I don't know. I think it has a fan base out there. I think it's considered one of the better horror remakes, which may not sound like it's saying much, but that's saying a lot. Over on Twitter, Zach on Twitter says favorite remakes: The Thing, obviously. Peter Jackson's King Kong. It's a little bloated, but it's not, the worst movie out there. And Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And I assume he's talking about the 1978 version because that is a stellar remake. Terrible or unnecessary remakes, Zach says Total Recall. Yeah, probably true. Aladdin. Hey, there we go. Aladdin right there. Talked about that. And he also says The Thing. And I think he's referring to the 2011 film, which is actually a prequel. So sorry, Zach, you got that one wrong. What would Zach like to see remade? Oh, we'll get to that in a second because we haven't talked about that.
Yeah. Total Recall just made me think one of the other horrible remakes was Fright Night. I just thought of that because they were both remade with Colin Farrell.
Man, horror films are just, they're the ones. They get remade so much.
Easy pickings, man.
Oh, and here we go. Some more favorites. Travis on Twitter says, we've brought these both up as well. 3:10 to Yuma and True Grit. Yeah. Good choices for our good films. What are some films that you, and I know there's probably a list for this, hope never get remade?
Princess Bride.
Cheers.
And Goonies.
You're an 80s child, aren't you?
I am definitely an 80s child.
Mine, and like there's plenty of them out there, but the one that always pops to mind for me is Jaws. Throw me as many ridiculous shark movies as you want to, but just don't do Jaws again.
My favorite movie of all time is All About Eve, and it's a perfect storm of awesome because it's about theater, but done in cinema and done with some of my favorite theater people, Mankiewicz and Betty Davis and Celeste Holm. I'm very interested. I have not seen the National Theater version that Lily James and Gillian Anderson did, and I'm really interested to see that if I can catch it online again when it projects, because to me it's such a it's perfect. It's perfect, and just leave it the F alone.
I agree. That is an excellent film. I wouldn't mind actually. I agree with you, and I agree with this in many regards. I wouldn't mind seeing theater adaptations, stage adaptations of a lot of these, because stage is so much more malleable than film that you're going to get a great take. You know, you're going to get terrible takes and great takes with the same script. So yeah, just because theater is so much more malleable, I do not mind at all if these movies end up on stage at some point. Well, maybe not Jaws. I wouldn't be surprised if Universal has actually done like some sort of live Jaws show at Universal Studios.
Cirque du Soleil using the O theater sequencing. They've got all of the swimming pools. I mean, come
on. Actually, they actually did at one point do a Creature from the Black Lagoon staged musical at Universal Studios.
Really?
It's like, why? But yeah, there's Jaws. There's, I can just look at my movie shelf and say I don't ever want to see that get remade.
Yeah.
No, we were talking in the Chris Nolan episode about a rumor of a Memento remake, and that is one I do not want to happen.
Oh yeah, I hope that doesn't happen either.
No.
I know he's big budget now. He's got all the money he'll ever need to make whatever movie he wants, but I don't think he should touch his older tiny budget films.
It's not always better. Bigger is not always better. There's an intimacy and a love that goes into the little guys. Let that be the thing.
So we'll just jump to the next question. What are some remakes that you were open to? I'll kick us off because I had one prepared. Since I'm always talking about classic horror movies, I would not mind seeing a remake of Creature from the Black Lagoon. Primarily because I love the original, but it is only a 70-minute film, and there's so much you could do with these older horror movies that are they're so short that there's not a lot of story to tell in 70 minutes. Plus, you can do so much more with the underwater stuff nowadays. I think it's incredible what they did in 1954 to have the actor Rico Browning, holding his breath for up to 5 minutes at a time to film stuff underwater. Like, the truth is, no studio could get away with that nowadays because of insurance stuff. So you're definitely going to be dealing with a CG monster, but I don't know, like take the first two movies in that trilogy, put them together for a 2-hour film and see where it goes from there. Because I think you can just do so much more underwater fluid motions with a monster these days. And I think The Shape of Water kind of showed off what a creature remake could do. So yeah, and of course I think anything that's public domain is up for grabs. In 20 years we'll probably see another Pride and Prejudice that will be it'll be telling that story, but it'll be again telling the story of 2040. There's always going to be a way to make all these public domain classics relevant to the times.
An 80s movie I would like to see a remake of is I personally would love to see a remake of Masters of the Universe because that is a terrible movie, but I love that mythology, that like story and characters.
I think that was actually in development for a while. I don't know if it still is. But yeah, there's some I think the horror exemplified like the best of what 80s pop culture filmmaking could do, and action movies, like some action movies exemplified the worst of what 80s pop culture could do in film, like Masters of the Universe. So yeah, there are probably other 80s films that could be remade easily. The ones that were just absolutely cheesy.
Well, I don't know that I necessarily want a full remake of Lady Hawk, but I would love a remake of the soundtrack.
I'm going to jump to back to social media because we got some fun answers on this one. Zach, again on Twitter, would like to see a Wolfman remake. I'd be cool with that. The Ewok Adventures. I don't know. I wasn't a big fan of the Ewok Adventures, so maybe they could tackle that again. The Black Cauldron.
Hey.
There we go. And here's a movie I would love to see someone tackle again and condense it down into one film, and that is The Hobbit.
Mm.
Yeah, like a real adaptation of that. A real live action adaptation.
I think the cartoon is the one that is the foremost in my mind. Yeah.
It's a good one. Yeah, it's funny because, of course, we talked earlier about how movies are supposed to be different from the books that they're based on. There is a fine line, though. I think the Harry Potter movies don't cross it, but The Hobbit definitely did.
Yeah.
So here we go with Zach again. Movies that Zach would never want to see remade. The Thing. Cool. Alien. Agreed.
Mm.
And sticking with Peter Jackson adaptations, let's never remake Lord of the Rings.
I mean, how can you? Also, what the hell would you do? What are you going to do?
Amazon is doing the Lord of the Rings television series, which is supposed to follow other goings on in Middle Earth while, the Fellowship is doing its thing. So that could be interesting.
So it's the Mandalorian of the Lord of the Rings. Okay.
Well, how many histories there's all kinds of stories in Tolkien's universe you could tell without needing to remake Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see if someone can do the Silmarillion and make it interesting for film.
That's actually what I would rather have seen a movie version of, I think, than The Hobbit. Or I would have rather them made like The Hobbit as one movie and then make like a Silmarillion movie. That's what I would have preferred.
But jumping over to Facebook, so Karen on Facebook, and Karen is my mom. Karen agrees with Dea. The remake of Rebecca, not good.
It's not the same. It's not a remake. It's a reimagining. It's not the book, for sure.
I would definitely not want to see an American remake of Amelie.
Oh, God, no.
Mm-mm.
I don't know tonally how we could even do that because American stories are always happy endings. And yeah, no, it's French. Leave it alone.
What are our closing thoughts on this whole topic?
Reimagining better than remake.
Yeah, totally agree. If you have something new to add, I'm on it. Otherwise, what's the point?
Or another thing I think has been working well in the last several years is that something that was told like as a movie, like a theatrical movie, which wasn't served by being a theatrical movie because maybe it was based on a book that's just longer and more complicated. Getting redone as a series, I think, has turned out well. Like one that I was on my list of something I really wanted to see a better version of was Golden Compass, His Dark Materials. Because that movie, The Golden Compass, that I can't remember when it came out, but it had Nicole Kidman and was not
Daniel
good
Craig
at all. And BBC HBO has recently redone it as a series, and the series is really good.
They nailed it. Okay.
Yes, yeah, you should check that. I need to check it out, and you should check it out, Dea. It actually stars Daphne Keane, who was X-23, the girl in Logan.
Hey.
And she was awesome in that.
Yeah, no, it was. We watched the first season, and I really like those books a lot. And it was excellent. And the second season, I think, just started recently. So.
Yeah, I agree that I really love this new term that Dea came up with for us, reimagining.
Oh, I didn't come. I definitely.
Well, it wasn't in the itinerary, Dea.
Right.
You introduced it. You introduced it to us in this show, in this context. So you get credit for that tonight. One of my closing thoughts is, and this is not necessarily, I don't want people to take this the wrong way, and this did come up on social media. James said, no movie is so sacred that it can't get remade. So we kind of have to live with that. It's true that not everything is going to get remade, but you can't hold a movie so high to such a degree that you expect it to not ever get remade, because Hollywood loves money.
I expect them to do it, but in my heart, I hold specific ones to a different standard where I'd like to hope. Leave it alone.
Oh, absolutely.
Leave it alone.
I think time is going to have a lot of effect on that too. The films that we hold sacred now, from the last couple decades, I think are mostly going to be immune because the directors or the producers or the people who worked on them are still with us. And they will defend those films. Guillermo del Toro will not let anyone touch Pan's Labyrinth or anything that he has made. But, 100 years from now, assuming that this planet still exists and life can inhabit it, someone may say, ooh, Pan's Labyrinth. Mm-hmm. What if we tried making that again? One of the reasons I think that a lot of old movies get remade is because there's no one around from back then to defend them. Once on that terrible day that Steven Spielberg passes away, imagine all the films that he has directed or just produced that people are going to try to snag up. That's going to be terrifying.
Which is hard because a lot of it is history and social consciousness at the time. And that's one of the issues with the new Rebecca remake, is that they gave her too much power, and I is very specifically without power. And that's what contributes to that character. So putting her in the Me Too post era and giving her more power, it doesn't help the situation with how the story is supposed to go. So, for instance, 100 years from now, you can't refilm Gone with the Wind because it's absolutely of its era, of its time, of its whatever. And you can try to readjust history, but it's just not going to work. And it wouldn't work to try to remake it unless you were trying to update it. And it won't update because it's history. I don't know how else to tell you. That is its own little time capsule. And we have a lot of things like Pulp Fiction. We have a lot of things, not the movie, but the Dashiell Hammett, where men are slapping women around and telling them to shut up. It's of the time. It's of the era. It's not appropriate for now. It was appropriate for that moment. And it's part of that artistic moment. And you can watch it as what it is, but it's not something you'd want to pick up and take up. It doesn't work as a story if you empower that woman all of a sudden, because he needs to be the person that does the thing where it doesn't work. So some of these stories just won't work if you try to remake them, just flat out.
I agree, but I don't think that's going to stop people from trying.
No, they'll try.
They'll try.
They'll try.
it's up to us as the audience to pick and choose what we accept when it comes to those remakes or reimaginings. So yeah, I guess on that note, it's time for trivia, everybody. Let's get some questions going here. I think everyone has a fair shot at this one, and this is a remake question. So, watcher, all you watching out there, please submit some movie trivia to me at fishilenseesall@gmail.com, because I have to keep coming up with questions myself, and it is hard to do that every time. So tonight's question is, so we talked about how Maltese Falcon got remade like 3 times, really quickly, but which of the following 4 films was remade the fastest? Was it A, Gaslight, B, La Femme Nikita, C, Death at a Funeral, or D, Let the Right One In?
I'm going to say Gaslight from Angel Street.
All right, Sarah?
That's a tough one. I feel like those all were very fast. I'll guess Let the Right One In.
Okay, well, Sarah, you have extended your lead.
Damn it.
You are now at 5 points. Yeah. 2
I
years.
can't even get on the board.
I really was guessing.
This is why I don't play Lotto. I never win. I never win.
So for everyone out there, the score right now is Sarah is at 5 and is probably going to walk away with the prize by year's end. Andrea, Mara, and Frank are all at 1. Dea, Daniel, and Jeanette are still not on the board. And we've got how many weeks left in the year? Oh yeah, I think Sarah is going to take this one. So for the rest of the year, we're just playing for fun and for honor. Okay, so that was our episode for tonight. For Sunday, November 22nd. Thanksgiving is coming up this week. Hey everybody, please don't partake in any gigantic family gatherings across the country and whatnot, because
think of the healthcare workers.
Yeah. Think of the healthcare workers. We're all still in a pandemic. Some of us still have to go to work. So if our work people get sick, that means we might get sick, and we don't want to get sick. No one wants to be sick. So please take care of yourselves. Think of your families. Think of the healthcare workers. Think of the movies we could all go see next year in a theater. I know that seems like really stupid, but I miss my movies so much.
I miss like everything.
Yeah.
I also miss seeing these 2 wonderful people in person. So, let's just stop this thing now.
Yeah, we miss game nights with actual board games.
We have Jack Attacks to do live and in person. We don't have time for this nonsense.
Yeah. So stay safe. Put on your masks. Let's get back in movie theaters and into each other's lives again. And yeah, let's get it. Let's flatten this damn curve. Thank you, everybody. I'm Ben Stahl. Thank you to Sarah and Dea for joining me once again. We'll be back soon with more movie stuff to talk about and to bug you about your masks. So on that note, everyone, have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.